10 mid-80s Euro action platformers on the Atari ST, coming up next. The Euro platformer. Today the term is used with much derision, mostly by console game fans, but even by some 80s computer game fans, and well, now, even by me. And we all should probably know better. Or should we? Yes, these games had very high difficulty, cheap deaths, a lot of jumping to unknown places, and mostly bad game design that would have the Retronaughts guys throwing up their arms in disgust. But they were also low budget, and in many cases well made, fun, and really all we had if you owned any type of 80s computer that was fed by the emergent and thankfully abundant UK and European software houses. Quality control was not a huge consideration, and publishers pumped out as many games as they could in hopes of catching pocket money on a weekend, or in our case, a pretty box that we could pick up at a budget price in an import shop here in the USA. So, while history is written by the winners, and in many cases, rightfully so, let's take a look at mid-80s examples of these so-called Euro platformers, created well before the quote-unquote correct game design ways were established and cemented by the console game industry. I'm picking to play these games on the Atari ST because it's the machine I had and the one I love to play on. It also bridged the gap in many ways between the 8 and full 16-bit era with its colorful graphics and decidedly 8-bit sound. The ST was a machine built for 1985, with very little concern about what would come next. Sometimes I jokingly call the games of this time the forgotten 12-bit era. Our definition of an action platform game here would be a contest where you walk, run, climb, and jump in some combination, but unlike Mario-style games, you're armed with a weapon at the beginning and must fight your way through the game. These games usually do not contain enough adventuring to be a full platform adventure or Metroidvania game, but obviously there is some overlap between genres, and games might show up in multiple categories because computer games do not always fit neatly into more well-known console game genres. I will note and briefly discuss these games if available on other systems, because you really should check them out on the machine of your choice. But the ST versions are the ones we'll be looking at today in 10 mid-80s Euro action platformers on the Atari ST and other 80s computers. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom from late 1987 is the earliest game we'll be looking at today. It was coded by Paragon and released by Mindscape in the US and US Gold in the UK. It's a conversion of an Atari Games coin-op, so it's debatable whether or not this really represents Euro platform gaming. But today we're going to use it as a jumping off point. Temple of Doom is a whip and slash, ladder climbing, slave rescue romp through the Temple of Doom caves. There is no real jumping as in later platform games, but there is some swashbuckling fun to be had. I liken it to a side-scrolling Alien Syndrome in a mineshaft. There are other playstyles included also, such as a mineshaft cart level. To say this game has mixed reviews is a massive understatement, with the ST version receiving reviews from the 90% in C, V, and G, all the way down to PowerPlay's 40%. It was one of the first movie plus arcade licensed games for the system and retained top spot throughout Christmas 1987 on the UK Atari ST charts. It was released for the C64, Speccy, CPC, NES, ST, and MSX in 1987, Following those, it managed to get to DOS, Amiga, and Apple II a year later in 1989. Atari Mania users aren't fond of it, with a 2.9 overall score out of 10, while Lemon Amiga users were just slightly more fond of their later release, with a 3.75 out of 10. I find this game to be playable, simple, and fun. Not really representative Euro, but more limited American-style platforming, but still, it's a step in the right direction, if only a small one. North Star from 1988 is a more traditional run, jump, and fight game, where you initially use a cool but limited robotic arm to fight your way through hordes of enemy robots. It looks like an Amstrad CPC game ported directly to the ST. But under these garish colors, is there a good game hiding? Well, North Star might have a few unique and good ideas laying about, but with all the cheap deaths and hordes of random enemy, it's Euro platformer inside and out. Atari ST Action magazine was not impressed, giving it a 43% and said, "Overall, North Star is very much a run-of-the-mill game. I found it very repetitive, and after only a short while, I became very bored with it." ST User, on the other hand, was much more impressed, with a 90% rating. Yes, you heard that right, 90%. Saying North Star is a brilliantly programmed game and is extremely addictive. It has superb graphics, animation, sound, and gameplay. I can only thoroughly recommend it. It was released on the ST as the lead platform, and also the CPC, Speccy, and C64, but Amiga owners lucked out and did not receive a version. So is it a 92% or a 42%? That's going to have to be left up to you, the listener and viewer. I kept dying and had to use a cheat to get anywhere, but I was still compelled to keep trying. Obliterator from 1988. Psygnosis and their early platform action efforts, such as Barbarian with mouse controls and sluggish response, had a little too much adventuring to make it into this list. But does this release make up for it? No Atari ST review of this game made it over 68%, with ST Action giving it 58 and commenting, "Oh dear, Psygnosis must be running out of ideas, because this looks like Barbarian in space." I'd love to say that this game, which was ported to the Amiga, DOS, ZX Spectrum, CPC, and MSX, fared better in the 8-bit versions with no mouse control, but none of those versions were reviewed very well either. Your Amiga magazine gave the Commodore 16-bit version high marks, saying, "This game is a must for any discerning arcade adventurer's collection. There are plenty of things to kill, and the action is top gear all the time." My hope here was that the extra Amiga hardware was put to good use, but after reading the Lemon Amiga user comments, it seems it was a sluggish mess also. So what did I think after playing the ST version? Well, It's probably the pinnacle of the mouse-controlled Psygnosis platformers, but I need a lot of practice playing this one. It has potential though, but that's not saying much. If you can get around the control, sluggish animation, mouse response, there is some fun to be had. The biggest problem was that I felt like I was playing on rails through a lot of the game. All I had to do was run in the right direction, and then the computer took over the control. Savage from 1988 by Firebird Microprose is 3 separate types of games over 3 levels, 2 of which are side-scrollers and 1 is a first-person style shooter. You play Savage, a muscular warrior who was imprisoned in a castle. As in many of these games, your goal is to rescue your fair maiden. This ST version was ported from the Commodore 64, with improved visuals, but possibly a slight downgrade in sound. It has all the frantic action of the Amiga version as noted by ST Action in their 73% review, when they commented, "Having played the Amiga version of Savage, which has fantastic digitized music and sound effects, I'm pleased to report that although the ST version loses on sound quality, the gameplay is just as frantic, constant, and enjoyable." I find the ST version of Savage to be quite fun, and you can start at any of the 3 levels with passwords in the Peter Pereira docs in the hard drive version. It still really can't shake some of the Euro platformer tropes though, such as one-hit deaths and obstacles that require far too much memorization or randomness. Prince of Persia, it's not, with its huge sprites that leave no space to play or see where you're going. Plus, the arc of your thrown axes is pretty annoying and typical of what many people call Euro sensibilities. On the other hand, all 3 level types together do make for a good little gameplay session. Shutdown from 1988 by Atlantis Software was only released on the ST and is a pretty simple but fun, low-budget, run and fire, destroy all the robots, and find computers game. I found one review in Generation 4, in French. Here it is roughly translated. A commando soldier, armed with a flamethrower, melts robots that come and go in the corridors. His energy and ammunition are limited. A pale remake of Green Beret. The least we can say is that Atlantis won't have much trouble doing better next time. Who are they kidding? If this game was meant to make them known, then it's a success. I'd even say they've been spotted. Shutdown is appallingly mediocre. Yes, I think they're right, but this is a very early game. I found Shutdown to be kind of like Impossible Mission with all of the thought taken out, but it's worth a look. It's really more of a run and gun game, and for me the biggest puzzle was trying to find more flame for my flamethrower once I ran out. I did have a little fun though. Vixen, released as She-Fox in Germany and Vixen everywhere else, is a 1988 game that just might be the ultimate stereotypical 80s 12-bit Euro platformer with fun, bouncy music, 16-pixel scrolling, action, pickups, and good, simple, clean fun? Well, maybe. It's not great or even good by any means, but it's worth a play. The Vixen is the last human on planet Granith, which is now ruled by a race of dinosaurs. She has been raised by foxes and intends to follow through on a promise she made to her elders to wipe out the dinosaurs and restore the planet to humanity. ST reviews range from 80 all the way down to 37%, but the consensus was that it has, as CVG stated, good graphics, nice sound, but a little mundane in the playability department. Vixen was released on DOS in 1988, and then the ST, Amiga, C64, Spectrum, and CPC later. Atari Mania users have given Vixen 6.2 out of 10, and Lemon Amiga users 3.3 out of 10. So I assume it was a huge disappointment and did not make use of any of the J. Miner and team's designed custom game and animation hardware. I had a little bit of fun playing Vixen, but it really adds nothing to the genre to disprove that Euro platformers were a little samey and meh at this point in time. It's sluggish with weird jumping physics, and I was never compelled to get my Fox points up enough to see where the extra powers came from. The Fox bonus game level was a huge letdown, so I didn't even try. Skrull from 1988 by 1632 Diffusion. What to say about this game? It's a mouse-controlled mess that puts the Euro platformer in Euro platformer. I could not get Skrull to do much of anything, and not for lack of trying. As many Amiga users said on Lemon Amiga, it's a bad rip-off of Barbarian, which of course was also a mouse-controlled mess. Okay, so what is Skrull supposed to be? Well, according to Moby Games, this is the story. The world of light is vanishing. No more glimmer, no more warmth, not even the slightest spark. Only you, Skrull the Barbarian, the incredible bastard son of the unnatural love between the Sun Woman and the Shadow Man, can free the light again. But the gloomy world of darkness is full of dangers. Okay, but what did reviewers think? The German magazines hated it on both the ST and the Amiga, but Ray's magazine reviewed the budget release on both systems and gave it pretty good scores at 75 and 79% respectively. Even after I kind of figured out the keyboard and mouse controls to play a little bit, I got bored and killed often right away. It really is a huge mess of a game, especially for me. Thundercats from 1988 by Elite is a children's television TV license crafted into a Ghouls and Ghosts style hack-and-slash adventure. The Thundercat must defeat Ra's forces, which range from dwarves to bats. Although you start with only a sword, more weapons can be collected by attacking the various containers through the levels. The C64 was the lead platform, with ports to the Spectrum and CPC in 1987, and then the ST and Amiga the following year. There were some 90% reviews for this game across all platforms, but also some 55 and 60% reviews. So which is it? Well, in an ST 85% review, the Games Machine UK said this: "This version offers much improved graphics and slick animation, which slightly slows down the pace. But this is compensated for by shorter sword strokes, demanding a greater precision in fighting. A tough, well-designed challenge, this is a compelling conversion that is a must for all ST owners, whether they be fans of the BBC series or not." While the CV&G Amiga and ST view was pretty blunt. A single combat move and repetitive play make this a dull game for avid fans only. I have to more agree with CVG here, but they didn't seem to play through much of the game, as extra weapons are just around the corner if you play long enough. I find Thundercats to be a fun game that is very Euro. Death is abundant and the difficulty is high. Cool new weapons are available as you progress. The swing of your sword is initially hilariously shallow, making the tiny enemy so hard to hit that you'll continuously die by them nibbling on your ankles. So I was relieved to get the gun on level 2. But just as I was getting used to it, I picked up a sword again and had no idea how to switch back to the gun. I'd love to be able to say that the well-received Warlock's Quest righted the entire Euro platformer ship in one fell swoop, but I couldn't get it to work correctly on my STFM or in Steam or Atari. I did kind of get it to work with the keyboard, but that's not a fair way to judge it against other games at the time with these controls. It does play okay, and with its colorful 8-bit Spectrum style design and push scrolling with no sound effects, it harkens to 4 years earlier in game design, no matter how good it might have seemed at the time. This is a game that ST Action Magazine said was the best action game to come from Europe in a long time, and could not recommend it highly enough. ST User, though, was not impressed, saying better games, though admittedly in monochrome, have been around on the Spectrum for years, and most run far faster. Warlock hasn't been thought out properly, and not enough time has been spent on programming. Shame, really. I hope the Edge take more care in their next project. The Amiga was the lead platform, followed by the ST, C64, Apple II, and Mac versions. I hope that by collecting the scroll on the bottom of the second screen, I would be able to get some sort of power-up, but all it did was lead to more death. This is an interesting one to explore further, if I can get it to work with a joystick. So we're going to end with the game I had the most fun with. Beyond the Ice Palace, 1988 by Elite, was released for the Atari ST, Amiga, C64, Amstrad CPC, and the Spectrum, all at about the same time. The Games Machine UK and CV&G gave pretty much all versions between 70 and 78%. ST User and Zap Magazine gave the 16-bit versions 69%. Harsher reviews came from ST Action and Amiga Power, who were less impressed, giving it 58 and 53% respectively. Basically, all the reviews said the game was playable and liked it to various degrees. ST Action said it was simple arcade fare and adequate fodder for platform fans. ST User added, there are plenty of puzzles to solve and nasties to slaughter, so there's no time to stop and catch your breath. Recommended. For my taste, it has the action I like, and you can summon a spirit-like smart bomb to help on your quest. But its jumping mechanics and difficulty right off the mark make sure that it doesn't quite move the needle away from the Euro platform label. But it certainly doesn't support the notion that only good platform games came from Japan either. It gets pretty close to being good, but with the difficulty and the blind jumps, it lacks the game design to really push it past the stereotype of Euro platformer. Of interesting note is an interview with the graphics designer who had this to say in ST Format magazine. My work was all done on the Atari ST, since that seems to be the one that the bulk of games in the UK sell best on. So it's the one that most software houses are interested in doing first. Usually, any ST game is converted for the Amiga within a month or two, but that doesn't really affect me. The graphics I've designed stay the same, the backgrounds and everything are just ported over, and Chris gets to work on the programming. That was Nigel Brownjohn, the graphics designer who also did Savage, which we looked at earlier. So that's it for this time. We looked at some bad to decent action platformers, and I would like to go back and give 2 or 3 of them another chance. I have to admit that I think both Savage and Beyond the Ice Palace might actually be kind of good, and I'd like to give Warlock's Quest a second chance also. So until next time, have fun playing the action platformer of your choice on the machine of your choice in the vertical blank.
We were children of the Silicon Revolution, an X generation conscripted to fight the console and home computer wars. A product of an analog 70s childhood, we came of digital age in the 80s, believing we could affect the world 8 bits at a time. Armed with joysticks, full-stroke keyboards, Jolt Cola, and MTV haircuts, we proceeded into the vertical blank. There, we stayed up late at night, devising incantations from D&D rulebooks and beginner's all-purpose symbolic instruction code. Video games were the match, and programming was the fuse, as the infinite possibilities of the digital world exploded into the internet age to come. We are Generation Atari.
Into the vertical blank.